Welcome to the connection between cybernetics or management cybernetics and the amazing social physics. This is a series of 25 videos, each about 2 or 3 minutes in length. Watch those who appeal to you from their subtitle, or watch them all, straight through. Social physics is a new science, a cybernetician's dream come true. Perhaps I would argue with the word physics in the title, it could very well be social cybernetics or group cybernetics. But in the end, both physics and cybernetics are everywhere. They are just two different ways of looking at the same world. There are many topics linking cybernetics and social physics: information, communications, black boxes, ideas and memes, human behavior, computers, software, high-tech gadgets, big data, models, business organization, markets, law, contracts, the economy, collective intelligence, and government. I even start with an example from golf to explain how technology has impacted our lives. Your comments are very welcome. Thank you for watching, and do not forget to share with others. The cybernetic approach is a tour-de-force strategy to isolate exactly the variables you want from a very complex system. This is the approach, I think, that social physics takes. Let me give you an example. In the late 1960s, cybernetics was a baby boomer science already making a huge impact on the world. Even golf was touched by cybernetics, as in the classic book The Search for the Perfect Swing, published in 1968. Back then, strobe lights for swing time data was the best you could do to slow down the golf swing. Now, there are videos running at 2000 frames per second or even much higher. Well, social physics is doing to cybernetics what 2000 frames per second videos are doing for golf. Social physics has found a method to hit a scientific jackpot that validates cybernetics as the superscience of interconnectedness. Thanks to the penetrating eyes of social physics, we can now have requisite variety about social behavior. Allow me to explain my golf metaphor a little more. At 2000 frames per second, a golf ball traveling at 120 miles per hour seems to stand still. With social physics, complex and massive social behavior stands still so we can see and study everything we want about human behavior, and for once have proof of what we just saw. Cybernetics was born as a science of control and communications in the animal and the machine. This is how MIT's child prodigy mathematician Norbert Wiener decided to call it in 1948. Later, Ross Ashby reformulated cybernetics as the science of ideal machines, mechanical, probabilistic, or even paper and pencil machines. That was a portentous contribution, as Euclid's geometry has been to mathematics. Stafford Beer took Ashby's evident cybernetic laws and applied them to all viable organizations to create a new, highly specialized language called management cybernetics. Finally, cybernetics became a second-order cybernetics when it reached out to study the relativity of the scientific observer. No wonder Pentland, author of Social Physics, says, "At MIT, we do not use cybernetics anymore. It is like air. It is everywhere." Let's watch the rest of the videos with this in mind. Paraphrasing Shakespeare, I would say, cybernetics, by any other name, is still cybernetics. Cybernetics was born as an interdisciplinary science. The Macy Group, shown in this picture, was the instigator of its creation. Dozens of beautiful minds were brought together to discuss about the notion of feedback shortly after World War II. Through feedback, cybernetics connects to everything that shows some sort of purpose. It connects with dirt as soon as it fuels a plant, with air as in a pressure valve, electric signals guiding a torpedo traveling in a phone line or jumping a synapse. Nora Wiener and Arturo Rosenbluth saw at first a hard science connection between the living and the mechanical. Warren McCulloch and Gregory Bateson fell in love with the idea immediately. Johnny von Neumann, shown here in this last picture, stole the show with his design for the first programmable memory computer. Bits and bytes were invented and the Big Bang of the information age began. Too bad very few people look back. Not many know or remember the history of cybernetics, but at least the prefix cyber survives everywhere. Is social physics coming to the rescue? Please follow onwards. A new star rises to shine in the long and dark night of cybernetics. It is called social physics, with a cybernetic heart and mind. It makes maps. That is science now, in a more humble role. Maps and models, a science that crushes massive amounts of data on computers. It studies human behavior from undeniable sources of hard data. It tracks its subjects surreptitiously, while they no longer remember they are being watched. Every move, every gesture, even flinches. Sometimes every word. There are millions of connections between humans that are trackable and recordable. High-speed computers will figure it out. The software is not simple, but it is highly reliable. Millions of co-relationships. Then, the surprising conclusions. Economies are not what we thought. Markets are flawed. Government needs redesigning. Because of its very nature, its computerized methods, it will become a new star in the cybernetic arsenal of sciences, next to artificial intelligence, computer science, the new economy, management cybernetics, and specifically social cybernetics. Like so many other mature sciences, it ran away from home and adopted a new name with its own star power. The founder of social physics is Alex Pentland, professor at MIT, the same MIT where Norbert Wiener, the father of cybernetics, taught for more than 30 years. He is part of a new generation of acute scientists that has earned the access to all the computer power and resources they want. He is also a businessman. He is shown here wearing Google glasses, in which he played a key role in making come true. He describes himself as a computational social scientist, organizational engineer, and mobile information systems pioneer. His work from the year 2000 onwards is described as the use of computer and digital technology to study unconscious social behavior behind conscious action and decisions. He is one of the world's leader in big data. This is adding millions of microscopic views of human behavior using any available gadgets to track locations, gestures, and movements. He is also the author of another book called Honest Signals: How They Shape Our World. Before that, he was working on wearable computer technology. He is director of the very prestigious MIT lab, and his scientific discoveries and inventions have been turning into good business. He is a scientist with immense star power at the Economic Summit at Davos. Asked why his 2014 book was called Social Physics and not Social Cybernetics, he answered, "The term has disappeared at MIT because cybernetics is everywhere, like air." Coming from him, it is a very quotable reply. So, social physics it is. This is what Pentland has said about the need for social physics. Adam Smith, John Locke, and other thinkers helped forge an open society which has outcompeted other top-down centralized societies. But markets and classes are now obsolete. This according to the lessons from social physics. Today, millions of direct interactions between people are driving economic bubbles and even political revolutions. A new science is making amazing discoveries about how people really behave. The biggest problem in the world: how can we organize ourselves to make good decisions and carry them out? The core problem is that we do not know how to manage ourselves. We need to know more about ourselves and our species and how we work together. We need social physics. For the first time, we have big data. It is mostly about human behavior. Where do people go? What do they do? What do they buy? Observations of humans where you can understand for the very first time in a quantitative, predictive way what people will do. Management science could actually be a science. In contrast to cybernetics, which was born after World War II, and management cybernetics born in the late 60s, social physics was an impossible science just a few years ago. The reason is that it requires the use of the latest communication technologies, such as millions of smartphones and or sociometric badges, and a computing capacity of inordinate size and speed. It is like having a detective follow a person all day long and take note of his every move, except that it is done by electronic means with dozens or millions of people at the same time. It analyzes patterns of human experience and idea exchange. Same as Hansel and Gretel left breadcrumbs in the forest, people are generating mountains of calls, credit card transactions, and GPS location fixes. A new reality from living laboratories is being mined thanks to the use of sociometric badges. All types of groups are targetable and mappable: social networks, health, finance, politics, consumers. The watchful eye of social physics can record to the microsecond with no problem. Social physics respects individual privacy because it is not interested in names or persons, but black boxes, how ideas flow in and out among people that belong to a particular group. Ideas are being transformed and transferred and become observable behaviors. An idea goes in, a behavior comes out. Inputs and outputs. Patterns start to emerge after specialized software does its job. These patterns are starting to disprove many current assumptions about the economy, how markets work, or the effectiveness of government policies. Many institutions will be shaken by social physics. New arguments will appear that will strengthen the arguments for change proposed by management cybernetics since the early 70s. Here are two examples of social physics in action. Thanks to huge amounts of information available from mobile phones and GPS systems, social physics can contribute to improve the efficiency of public and private transportation. Combining personal daily schedule information with data from GPS systems that detect traffic congestions, it could generate personal transportation schedules that avoid traffic snarls. Cell phone data could also prevent accidents, anticipating spots where previous drivers have had to apply emergency braking. Driving habits and preferences can combine with weather data and other information. Companies can anticipate and help prepare for peaks and valleys in road use. Knowing where and when citizens travel could also help improve urban planning. With better actual data of transportation habits, better design of public transportation systems could also benefit everybody by decreasing the use of individual transportation and all the hidden costs it implies. In matters of health, big data is big help. It can stop pandemics from happening. The infection risk of an entire area can be figured out. How fast a virus is spreading and anticipate demand for vaccines. Persons becoming ill can be detected early simply by their change in routines. Even patterns of depression are detected as people isolate themselves from others. Pentland says it is possible to actually classify people's overall health state from their behavior alone. One possible suggestion from cybernetics to social physics is to adopt the meme as part of its language. It is more to the point than the word idea. Memes were created by the world-renowned biologist Richard Dawkins in his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene. Susan Blackmore, also shown here in a picture, has expanded on Dawkins' suggestion. Memes are small packages of information, usually useful enough to be captured into a person's memory. Memes can carry information, ideas, plans, algorithms, procedures, pictures, but mostly important behavior rules. Memes join the rank of the replicators, just like DNA and viruses. They self-replicate, mutate, and respond to selective pressures, but originate in the immaterial world of information, symbols, bits, and bytes. The idea behind the meme is that they are as alive as a virus is in biology. The virus finds cells to work for them and reproduce their DNA. Memes stay inside a person, and sometimes they are improved. Once transformed, however, slightly, this improved meme is exported with its new contents ready to infect, in the good sense of the word, another person who finds it more useful. Memes are usually intended to influence behavior. Perhaps an idea, as such, will never translate into action. Memes contain behavior rules of the type, if this happens, then I will do this other thing. Mirror neurons may be behind the meme copying phenomena, and therefore in widespread behavior imitation, which is the interest of social physics. Certainly, memes containing some sort of behavior rule are the ones that would interest social physics the most. In the social physics, Pentland explains that what is new are the data-gathering mechanisms he uses to study the effect of spreading ideas through human interactions, and the sophisticated mathematical models and computer processing power that can detect patterns of behavioral changes as a result of the exploration and adoption of those new ideas. This analysis is called reality mining and is practiced on living laboratories using sociometric badges. As far back as 1970, in a paper called Renaissance, Stafford Beer was talking about the data trail each citizen is leaving behind, forced by inefficient government regulations. He is wholeheartedly fighting against the bureaucratic traps. The point to be made here is that in spite of the government having blindly fast computers at its service, the ordinary citizen cannot count on that for his benefit. Government, especially federal, keeps growing faster than almost any other sector of society. One of Stafford Beer's most important insights to thinking smart about the use of computers is the variety control equation. Computers are control variety amplifiers, but if used on the wrong side of the control equation can become the source of massive, undesired variety. For instance, huge data printouts nobody reads. Banks, governments, and phone companies usually can turn the power of the computer against the ordinary citizen, not in his benefit. We all remember the 1984 Macintosh commercial against Big Brother. As we can see from our previous ideas, social physics is pointing its analytical power towards the behaviors of ordinary citizens. Perhaps those same citizens would like that the same computer power also be pointed to track the massive waste of monies resulting from government's reckless spending. Cybernetics cannot set aside the fact that governance is a subject that no other science is so well equipped to be critical of. Perhaps social physics can reach out in support of cybernetics' most urgent task and start applying its detective methods to track sociometric data about the members of Congress and White House staff. In social physics, Alex Pentland says that Daniel Kahneman and Herb Simon embraced a model of a human mind with two ways of thinking. One way is fast, automatic, in largely unconscious mode, and the second is a way of thinking that is slow, rule-based, and largely conscious. Pentland then links slow thinking with exploration, and fast thinking with everyday experiences we integrate from others by copying successful behaviors without much thought. In both cases, he says, the influence of peers and their benefits for any group cannot be underestimated. Slow and fast thinking receive a hearty welcome as part of social physics thinking. I say that the fast and slow criteria can be deceptive. There is a much better explanation that goes to the heart of two scientific paradigms. Cybernetic logic uses circular causality to explain its phenomena. Physics uses logistic reasoning and cause-effect connections. If you are catching a ball, crossing a street, or grasping a glass of water, even though it involves a physical activity, your brain is using circular causality, that is, making an intense use of incoming information and processing feedback loops, making comparisons against previous experiences stored in memory. You do not calculate an incoming car in terms of miles per hour. You know that it is coming so fast or too slow to cross safely. Building a house or answering a test requires the slower mode of thinking using logic and time-consuming verifiable procedures. The distinction is a key feature for anyone who acknowledges the two very different scientific paradigms. Cybernetics is holistic. Classical physics is reductionistic. However useful, few people realize that the two modes exist and result directly from different logical schemes. I have never heard students being made aware that the legislative process is intrinsically a slowed-down circular causality arrangement versus the rest of the legal system where present sentences follow syllogistic reasoning. Social physics sets out to make another key distinction about idea flow, not disconnected from fast and slow thinking we have just seen in the previous video. Now stop and study the graph presented here. Read the note and then proceed. Pentland writes, idea flow within social networks can be separated into exploration, which is finding new ideas and strategies, and engagement, which is about letting everybody and everyone coordinate their behavior. Idea flow, for instance, the spreading of new behaviors through a social network, may be conceptualized as an exploration to harvest new ideas, followed by engagement with peers to sift through those new ideas and convert these good ideas into habits. For instance, the exploitation of a new technology, the production of social goods, etc. Exploration is defined as the use of social networks in harvesting ideas and information. In management cybernetics, the viable system model features two distinct functions. Exploration, which is the essence of the planning department and includes research and development and market research, to name a few who share this operation mode, explores the environment for innovation or unforeseen problems to be solved. The other function is not called engagement, as it is in social physics. I prefer to call it exploitation of the operation, which is the job of the director or executive. It handles well-known procedures with well-known results. This part of the VSM governs the operation or production function, which also requires coordination, handled by a system 2, and lots of cooperation from actual operators of the production process. Direction and execution of tasks, called System 3, require a logic where precise steps are taken and followed rigorously. This is why I have called this exploitation, in part to rhyme with exploration, exploitation combination. As far as the logic used in each case, cybernetic logic is based on a successive approximation method to reach decisions, so it would be expected in any planning activity where you are constantly solving new problems and passing the solutions to production, only to start searching for new ones. Copying successful behaviors seen in others makes a lot of sense for a practical planning staff and any efficient director of production. It saves a lot of information processing. Social physics calls this agreement to act in coordination engagement. The more you practice it, the better you become at it. Engagement, which is repeated cooperative behavior, builds trust and increases the value of a relationship. Social physics exploitation is already present in the viable system model. Engagement is related to the system's 3-2-1 connection to the viable system. So let's welcome the conclusions of social physics when it says, the level of engagement is a strong predictor of team productivity and resilience across a wide spectrum of human activities. Engagement was the central predictor of productivity. Social physics and management cybernetics would like to say goodbye to organization charts. Pentland is very clear. Moving from a management that uses organization charts to a management that monitors idea flow requires a shift away from the individual talent approach to managing organizations and a move towards shaping interaction patterns to achieve better collective intelligence. Exploration, in turn, predicts both innovation and creative output. Innovation is the most important driver of long-term performance. Social intelligence within a group can be increased by providing visual feedback to their interaction patterns. This feedback is a sort of computer-aided social intelligence. From the very beginning, management cybernetics has said that syllogistic logic and the organization chart it generates is absolutely incapable of dealing with the complexity displayed by the modern business world. The viable system model must be much better than the classical pyramid hierarchy as a command structure. It has made its way into the Department of Defense to organize special forces missions, such as U.S. SEAL teams. Here is an example. Shan Tornbull from the International Institute for Self-Governance proves the obsolescence of the command pyramid. As much as 50% of the information is lost as it is transferred from one level to the next. In a 10-level pyramid organization, that means that a meager 3% makes it from the top to the bottom or vice versa. Good for him. Collective intelligence is perhaps one of the secrets to solving our problems with organizations, such as big multinationals or governments who are evidently out of control. Out of scientific lack of respect towards representative democracy, Stafford Beer invented the Team's Integrity Protocol, an absolutely democratic decision-making method. In it, 30 people take their places as part of an icosahedron structure which will generate ideas to solve a particular problem or generate an action plan. In his book Social Physics, Alex Pentland explains, groups have a collective intelligence that is mostly independent of the intelligence of the individual participants. Group intelligence is about as important a factor in predicting group performance as IQ is in predicting individual performance. The social physics team has found that cohesion, motivation, and satisfaction were not as important in predicting group intelligence as was the equality of conversational turn-taking. The pattern of idea flow was as important as all other factors taken together. Think about it, he says. Individual intelligence, personality, skill, and everything else together matter less than the pattern of idea flow. These characteristics typical of the highest performing groups included 1. A large number of ideas, many short rather than few large. 2. Dense interactions. 3. Diversity of ideas with similar levels of turn-taking. Pentland could have been describing the essential assumptions of team's integrity. The Malik Management Centrum in St. Gallen has run hundreds of these centigrations. Pentland alludes in social physics to having information flow in real time, not only when you collect the data, but most importantly when you are going to act on the information. He says in page 209, the key to better systems is real-time monitoring of conditions. The sociophysics group is well aware that timely information can improve proper decision-making by leaps and bounds. Real-time management, not only real-time control, is surely in our future. Stafford Beer, the creator of Management Cybernetics, took with him to Chile his book Brain of the Firm in the early 1970s. During his involvement with President Allende's government, he and his collaborators, among them Raúl Espejo, Roberto Cañete, and Fernando Flores, designed a very modernistic-looking operations room. One of its main features would be processing production data in real time. The project came to an abrupt end with the downfall of Allende as a result of El Golpe, the coup. However, the basic design for real-time management is still operational and the opportunity is still out there for anyone who wants to seize it. The CyberSyn project has been documented elsewhere on YouTube. In his book of Social Physics, Alex Pentland says, one can imagine ancient humans sitting around a campfire making suggestions or relating observations, with other participants responding by signaling their level of interest or approval using head nods, gestures, and vocal signs. Animal behavior research, for instance bees and apes, supports this idea, meaning the importance of signs, even grunts, and body language in the most ancient group communications. Our sociometric badges and their data demonstrate that this is also what happens in modern group problem-solving sessions. I have become a friend of Chief Mel Lonehill of the Oglala Lakota tribe in Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. I am part of a hunting party of interdisciplinary researchers. One thing is clear, the Lakota are dying off fast, literally, as a nation and as individuals. Cybernetic methods of organization resonate with the traditional ways of the Lakota. Maybe social physics has a role to play here, which is of life and death urgency. Tribal discussions were once carried around the fire. Now they are boggled by bureaucracy and red tape imposed by a despondent White House thousands of miles away. Social physics is already saying two things we can use. First, that transportation systems do wonders to increase idea sharing in a community. The Lakota have no public transportation, or any transportation for that matter. They are among the poorest of the poor in the United States. The other thing that social physics can say loudly is that the American society would gain a lot from the dialogue-based culture and oral traditions for effective and humane government. With the current technologies at our disposal, we should wait no longer to install participative democracies the world over, instead of the broken representative democracy system now in place. By tending to the Lakota way of thinking, we would be rescuing ourselves also. In the book Social Physics, Alex Pendleton writes about what he calls engagement. Engagement is repeated cooperative behavior. It builds trust and increases the value of a relationship, which in turn generates social pressures needed to establish cooperative behavior. This means that the more cooperation there is, the more that form of behavior is reinforced and kept in place. He adds pages ahead, the level of engagement is a strong predictor of team productivity and resilience across a wide spectrum of human activities. His conclusion about engagement, I read it from page 96 of the book. Engagement was a central predictor of productivity. In the viable system model, this engagement is so important that it is not left to chance. It is built into the model. A specific communications channel has been identified having the express purpose of generating cooperation among operators. It is called System 2, or the coordination channel. We must take into account that the viable system model describes viable entities that in essence are processes. Coordination of activities is a key component to any process. There are sequences of tasks to be realized in precise order, as in a kitchen recipe. Trust is built through repeated cooperation, as is the self-organizing system of eBay with their product seller's reputation. The coordination function in a production process is a reflection of the human autonomic nervous system that Stafford Beer incorporated into the viable system model. Fernando Flores, the controversial Chilean with international fame and a viable system model expert himself, created the highly successful Coordinator business software, not very long after being released as a political prisoner in Chile, where he was captured during the coup d'etat in September 1973. By the way, if you Google Fernando Flores, you will find that he has been credited as being one of the 4 inventors of BPM, Business Processing Management Software. In my book, The Cybernetic State, which is now closer to becoming a reality thanks to social physics, I explain that cooperation, as in all market activity, is a great amplifier of self-control for those involved and with mutual benefits. However, a higher authority is sometimes necessary because inevitably contracts dispute arises. Contracts are still a higher and more complex form of cooperation, but disputes have to be settled and enforced. This first metasystemic authority was first displayed by merchants' tribunals in Venice, for instance, and later took a historic backing in the administration of justice imparted by monarchs. Social physics makes some startling discoveries that shake current economic theories and assumptions, and it works with real data, not averages. Pentland explains, much of the language I use in the book draws from economics, but rather than study how economic agents work and how economies function, social physics seeks to understand how the flow of ideas turns into behaviors and action. Social physics is about how human behavior is driven by the exchange of ideas, how people cooperate to discover, select, and learn strategies and coordinate their actions, rather than how markets are driven by the exchange of money. Rationality, as a term is used by economists, means that we know what we want and act to get it. But I think, says Pentland, that my research shows that both people's desires and their decisions about how to act are often, and perhaps typically, dominated by social network effects. Our ability to survive and prosper is due to social learning and social influence at least as much as it is due to individual rationality. Social physics provides a new practical method that specifies how to create social incentives that establish cooperative behaviors. Because the social sciences, including economics, have had to work with such impoverished data, it has been difficult for scientists to understand the process of change. The field of economics has been dominated by the analysis of equilibrium states. Think about society as a network of individual interactions rather than as markets or classes. Social physics views of cities is different from the classical models of class and specialization in that it focuses on the idea flows rather than static divisions in society. Social tie density and the idea flow offer simple, generative links among human interaction patterns and mobility patterns and the characteristics of urban economies without the need to appeal to hierarchy, specialization, or similar social constructs. This is not to scare anyone, but we cannot ignore Pentland's warning when he says, communities are made of social ties, and without the constraint of social pressure provided by social ties, capitalism can become predatory. Here are a couple of quotes from the Cybernetic State. Economics now becomes the science of life-supporting exchanges. Social physics, it seems, would support that same idea. The other quote says, the stability assumption of markets has now been overthrown by the evidence of rapid and sometimes catastrophic change. The assumption of perfect competition suffers the same fate. I guess many investors would have liked to have considered these insights before the 2008 market crash. I see social physics and management cybernetics in a complementary role. Each has its own methods for solving organization problems. Here's an example. In the Red Balloon Challenge, the social physics team had a resounding success by creating a network of millions in a very short time. They focused on creating social incentives instead of monetary incentives to solve the discovery of 10 red balloons flying over the United States. Social incentives exploit the bonds between people to work together. Monetary incentives only to solve problems may create competition that destroys collaboration even between friends. The red balloon experiment was solved very successfully by appealing to personal relations. in planning the incentives at a social level. In less than 24 hours, the 10 balloons were found. Nearly 2 million people became involved. Call it a carpet bombing strategy. Guaranteeing results requires management cybernetics to focus on a different metric: the intrinsic cohesion of the organization, the strength of connections that compose its structure, how it demands cohesion from each member. A very interesting law of cohesion. You can read it in the gray and blue box. It is quite difficult to understand for those not familiar with the cybernetic theory behind the viable system model, but in plain English, it means that the cohesion necessary for the effectiveness of the members of an organization is a function of the organization's purpose. For instance, shown here is a group of hippies. A society whose purpose is just transmitting the peace and love personal message does not need that much cohesion to keep going. People could walk in and out anytime, and whoever is a member won't have too much trouble transmitting the peace and love message. A society for peace and love demands very little cohesion. In contrast, a SEAL team needs all the cohesion it can muster. Nothing is left to chance. Every possible scenario is solved and practiced to the point of exhaustion. Group cohesion must be 100% all the time, or they will face grave consequences. We got a hint of this in video number 15, Goodbye to Organization Charts. These two examples underscore the difference between processing information, like balloon detection, and an actual operation, such as being successful at finding and killing a terrorist leader. Recursive structures are nature's way of organizing ever more complex organisms. Humans sometimes mimic nature deliberately, most of the time unintentionally. Management cybernetics does it all the time, on purpose. The viable system model is a recursive structure. It means that the parts can be described in the same way as the whole. A whole is made of parts identical to itself. In this representation of the viable system model, we can notice how the three internal operations, one of which I have tinted red, have the same structure as the overall model. In the social physics book, it is very clear that the conclusions found at group level are found applicable to companies, cities, and societies. Recursiveness as a feature of complex system is not alluded to as such, but the thread throughout the book conveys the idea that social physics conclusions apply to many recursion levels. On page 7 it is companies, cities, and social institutions, and also small groups, companies, cities, and entire societies. On page 9, Pentland talks about entire social organisms, groups, companies, and whole communities. Having come this far, we are very close to getting the big picture about managing complex organizations. We need to give them a nervous system. So says social physics, and the same has been said by management cybernetics for more than 40 years, except that today it would be much easier. As has become evident by now in this succession of videos, the nodes for a nervous system and their communication connections are already in place. Millions have a computer or iPad and internet access. What is missing is to identify the purpose and determine the structure. All systems are go. Management cybernetics was born with the idea that the human nervous system is the most perfect control system in the universe. Stafford Beer's viable system model replicates the basic architecture of the human brain. The CyberSyn project in Chile in 1973 was creating a nervous system based on cybernetic laws for the Chilean social economy. Here is what social physics is telling us. We must use our technologies to create a nervous system that maintains the stability of government, energy, and public health systems around the globe. Our current digital feedback technologies are already capable of creating the level of dynamic responsiveness. Many of the sensing and control elements required to build a digital nervous system are already in place. Today, we have a digital nervous system of sensors and communications already in place, ready to transform our cities into data-driven, dynamic, responsive organisms. The most important generator of city data is a familiar tool, the ubiquitous mobile phone. This new nervous system can change our lives. Around the world, governments and universities are beginning to take a new look at how cities are organized and governed, motivated by the rapid increase in populations and the new cities that are being created. It is promising, says Pentland, that many of these initiatives are reconsidering the basic design principles of cities and are beginning to take seriously the proposals of my colleagues and me to create a nervous system using mobile phone sensing and trust networks. Alex Pentland, writing in his book Social Physics, says that governments have to stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution. He writes, I show how we can begin to build a society that is better at avoiding market crashes, ethnic and religious violence, political stalemates, widespread corruption, and dangerous concentrations of power, and in which governments are part of the solution rather than part of the problem. I have to say that this is much worse than that. Translating Pentland's own words into cybernetic terms, it means that government is supposed to work as a huge control amplifier for the benefit of the people. However, if the control amplifier is on the wrong side of the control equation, that means that the people have to struggle against their government while at the same time they are funding the government. Would you pay the attorney who takes you to court? Therefore, management cybernetics has a very clear stance that the people's number one problem is bad governance. We know how to organize. The VSM is not that difficult. We just have not found enough critical mass to deal with the real culprit, an out-of-control government. What we also know for a fact is that the Leviathan has evolved emergent properties that prevent any real change from happening soon. In fact, the modern democratic state is suffering from a more generalized malady that is affecting almost all large organizations. The technical name with a sinister twist comes from biologist Umberto Maturana. It is pathological autopoiesis. It means out of control self-production, as in cancer. The biggest problem is how to redesign government so that it serves the people, not itself, not the bureaucrats or the politicians. Government has developed antibodies that oppose the future already at our doorstep. If government were following the viable system model prescriptive structure, it would automatically redesign itself. We can tell that it is social physics' turn to ring the bell loud and clear. Usually, science wants to be able to explain in order to predict, and to predict in order to control. Excluding astronomy, I guess. The book Social Physics says economics and politics must extend to include exchange of ideas, information, social pressures, and social status in order to explain human behavior. A holistic view of organized society, that is to say, the state, requires integrating politics, economics, and law. This is the view taken by the cybernetic state. The viable system model shows the invariant structure through which information is exchanged to produce a viable society. Stafford Beer helped me find the connection between law and cybernetics. The American Constitution maps almost perfectly to the viable system model. Maybe it took centuries of trial and error, but lawyers, and this means including the founding fathers of the United States, applied cybernetic principles to create a system of checks and balances without knowing a thing about cybernetics. Not less interesting is that the Iroquois, American Indians living in what is now New York State, close to the Lake Ontario, contributed some of the main features of the U.S. Constitution. This is a fact that has been certified by none other than the 100th U.S. Congress. Cybernetics and social physics have to recognize that American Indian culture had a built-in intelligence that we are only now beginning to notice and appreciate, thanks to social physics. I therefore dedicate this video to my friends of the Oglala Lakota tribe and the still existent Iroquois Confederacy. Wo Lakota to all, which means a covenant of peace and friendship without greed. Social physics and management cybernetics will eventually join forces under the cybernetics scientific paradigm. Their subject matter, human social behavior and control, has a huge overlap, and yet their differences can create a great synergy by working together. Both agree that we need a more organic or systemic government. The sooner, the better. I call that information-based state the cybernetic state. Taking the main thrust from social physics lessons would translate into immediate adoption of new policies and the redesign of structural changes to match the policies. Among them, we shall have to consider, number one, share information. Government must have total transparency, no secret projects, no secret spending, everything out in the open. 2. Generate trust. All public policy abroad and at home shows the open resolve to do the right thing right all the time, regardless. Foes would turn into friends. Reward cooperation. Let people pay taxes with work hours, not money. 4. Facilitate engagement. People will have the right to label their tax money for specific projects. Computers can handle this variety easily. That would take a big load of work from Congress and give a lot of direct power to the people. 5. Promote exploration. Turn elections into a huge idea flow exercise. Computerized elections would take a week, and voting trends could be displayed till the last closing moment. 6. Adopt collective intelligence methods. In social physics terms, representative democracy is faulty. Create new collective intelligence mechanism. Learn from the LAKOTA wisdom. 7. Adopt computers as allies, not adversaries. Let computers do the hard work to help people, not exploit them. Let's design a democracy to operate within human capacities. Let's create a participative democracy where values, and then knowledge, not territory, now meaningless, becomes the first and second criteria for staffing planning boards to solve community problems. Representative democracy clearly does not have requisite variety. It is overwhelmed by obsolete assumptions, false promises, and generates all sorts of corruption. These are only a few of the many other ideas that would come out of a massive exploration of suggestions, all of them based on the discoveries of social physics and cybernetic thinking. Ask the question, what would the Founding Fathers do if they were alive today? That is a new way to organize.